Hey guys, tonight we slip into a place where the wind never stops talking, where the horizon is so wide it feels like someone erased the edges of the world, and where surviving, even a single day, counts as an achievement worthy of a medal. You open your eyes on the Mongol steppe flat, endless, a sea of grass that looks calm from far away, but hits you with a cold so sharp it feels like the air has teeth. There's no forest to hide in, no river conveniently waiting at your feet, no cozy medieval cottage in sight. Just you, your breath turning to frost, and the overwhelming realization that you've entered a world where everything from the weather to the wildlife to your own stomach is actively trying to negotiate your early exit. And trust me, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone is listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing on the steppe now, boots barely tied, and the first thing you notice is the sound, this low, sweeping howl that crosses the plains like an invisible wave. It's not a storm. This is just the Mongol wind saying hello. Your cloak flaps wildly behind you, snapping like it's trying to fly off on its own. The grass around you moves in long, synchronized ripples, almost hypnotic, like an ocean made of blades. You breathe in, and the air hits your chest with a cold that feels personal. Historians still argue whether this climate helped forge the toughness of the Mongol people, or simply weeded out anyone lacking heroic-level endurance. But either way, your modern lungs are filing a complaint. The steppe is deceptive. It looks empty, but it's alive in ways you're not ready for. A marmot pops up in the distance, squeaks indignantly at your existence, and disappears again, probably judging your survival odds. This is one of your quirky little tidbits for tonight. Mongols once used marmots as weather indicators, claiming their behavior could predict storms. Whether science agrees is debatable, but honestly, you'll take any advice you can get at this point. Your first real challenge arrives before sunrise. The steppe doesn't care that you're new. It follows its own schedule. The temperature drops without warning, sinking below freezing even in seasons that should, theoretically, be kind. You wrap your borrowed deal, a long, warm Mongol coat, tighter around you. But the wind sneaks in anyway like a mischievous intern determined to ruin your day. Your nose goes numb. Your fingers turn stiff. And you haven't even begun the actual work of living yet. A horse grazes a few paces away, tethered to a stake, hammered into the packed earth. This is your horse. For better or worse, you are now emotionally, physically, and spiritually attached to this creature. Because if it wanders off, you're not inconvenienced. You're done. Survival here is 80% horse, 10% willpower, and 10% pretending you're not terrified. Mainstream fact for you. Mongols learned to ride before they could properly walk, and their entire culture was built around mobility. If you're thinking, I barely know how to sit correctly on a bike seat, you're already behind. You take a hesitant step toward the animal. It lifts its head slowly, gives you a long, unimpressed blink that clearly says, "Oh, great, a beginner," and goes back to chewing the same patch of grass. You pat its neck or try to, but your hand is so cold, you're not entirely sure you felt the contact. Riding lessons will come later. For now, you're trying not to embarrass yourself in front of a creature whose resting heart rate is lower than your anxiety level. Your stomach growls. Breakfast is technically available, but it's not exactly what you'd call continental. One of the nomads hands you a leather flask containing fermented mare's milk, the Mongol staple known as erag. You take a sip, and it tastes like yogurt that got into a fight at a nightclub. You brace yourself and swallow, because you need calories and because refusing is rude. A quirky bonus fact. During certain festivals, Mongols used to judge erag based on the vigor of its foam, which means somewhere in history there were people passionately debating milk bubbles. The world is a fascinating place. As the sun rises, the colors of the steppe shift gold, then silver, then a pale, washed-out blue. The horizon stretches so far that distances become lies. Something looks close, but 8 hours later, you're still walking toward it, questioning every decision that led you to this moment. Mongols could travel astonishing distances with ease. You, meanwhile, are already winded. Historians still argue whether their legendary endurance came from genetic advantage, rigorous lifestyle, or simply having no choice in the matter. You begin trudging toward the temporary camp, your boots crunching frost that refuses to melt even under bright light. The cold seeps through the soles, through the fabric, through your hope. This is your first day, and already you understand why surviving in the Mongol Empire wasn't just difficult, it was a full-time occupation, with no benefits, no weekends, and absolutely no sick days. The camp comes into view. A cluster of Jur's round felt tents blending into the landscape like oversized pebbles. Smoke rises from one chimney, curling upward before the wind swats it sideways. People are already busy checking horses, preparing tools, boiling something that smells like it could either nourish you or spiritually challenge you. Kids run barefoot, because apparently they're built from a different material than you are. You step into the nearest Jur for warmth. Immediately, you're hit with the scent of wool, smoke, leather, and boiled dairy products. It's not bad, just intense. The heat from the stove is glorious, though. You sit down, thawing slowly, pretending you're not about to fall asleep against the wall. A woman pours you more airag. You politely accept, because declining would cause confusion, and you're not emotionally ready to disappoint anyone. Your day on the steppe has barely begun, but already you feel the weight of this world pressing against you. The land shapes everything, the food, the work, the pace of life, even the humor. As one herder laughs and tells you, if the wind stops, it's because it went to look for you. You smile politely, not entirely sure if that's a joke or a warning. Outside, your horse snorts, flicks its tail, and waits. The steppe stretches endlessly, and you realize with a quiet, uncomfortable certainty that surviving here means adapting faster than you ever thought possible. You step back outside, and the wind immediately reminds you who's in charge. It barrels into you like you owe it money, tugging at your sleeves, yanking your hood sideways, and stealing whatever warmth you collected in the Jur. Your horse shakes its mane as if to say, "Took you long enough," and you get the distinct feeling that this creature already has higher expectations of you than you do of yourself. You approach slowly, trying to project confidence, which, let's be honest, you absolutely do not have. But in the Mongol Empire, your survival depends almost entirely on earning this horse's trust. Horses rule everything out here. Their transportation, companions, status indicators, and occasionally lunch, though the last part is something you do your best not to think about while bonding with yours. The animal snorts softly, breath fogging in the icy morning air. You reach out to stroke its neck, and this time you're pretty certain you made contact, even if your fingers are still half numb. A mainstream fact to anchor you. Mongol warriors could ride for days, sleep in the saddle, and even drink the blood of their horses when necessary, without harming the animal long term. They had whole survival systems that revolved around these creatures. You, on the other hand, are still trying to figure out how to step into the stirrup without reenacting a slow-motion blooper reel. The horse notices your struggle, turns its head, and gives you that same unimpressed blink from before, as if mentally reviewing your application and wondering if you're truly worth the investment. But here's where life in the Empire gets interesting. Mongols didn't expect perfection, they expected effort. You place your foot in the stirrup, push up, and sort of flop over the saddle like a sack of potatoes. It's not graceful, but you're up there. Victory. A shaky, wobbly victory, but still. One of the herders laughs softly, not unkindly. Good. Start, he says. You fell onto it instead of off. That's better than most. You sit upright, wobbling. The horse shifts slightly, the world tilts. You consider screaming but decide that's not very warrior-like. Instead, you take a breath, grip the reins, with the confidence of someone who has Googled how to ride a horse exactly once, and pray the steppe won't swallow you whole. A quirky tidbit for your troubles. Mongol children were known to practice riding on sheep before they graduated to horses. Yes, sheep. Tiny, fluffy, less cooperative than you'd expect sheep. Picture toddlers determinedly clinging to woolly missiles across the plains. Somehow, this produced the greatest cavalry in world history. Meanwhile, you can barely sit still on a fully grown horse without your knees trembling like wet noodles in a windstorm. The sky brightens, and your trainer gestures for you to follow. We ride, he says, as casually as if suggesting a stroll. You swallow hard. Ride implies speed, coordination, and not falling off. 3 things you're not convinced you possess. But the horse starts moving before you vote on the matter, and suddenly the world is slipping beneath you, grass flying past in fast, fierce strokes, the saddle bouncing, your teeth rattling like you owe them rent. The steppe becomes a blur of colour, motion, and mild terror. But then something changes. Your body adjusts. Your arms loosen. The rhythm of the horse steadies beneath you. For one fleeting moment, you feel almost competent. The wind rushes past your ears, but this time it feels less like a bully and more like a companion. You catch yourself smiling until a bump threatens to eject you into orbit, and you cling for dear life again. Progress comes in layers. Historians still argue whether the Mongol mastery of horseback riding was the single most important factor in their expansion, or whether their tactics, discipline, and communication networks mattered more. But anyone who's ever attempted to stay upright on a Mongol pony knows one thing for sure. The riding skill alone was practically superhuman. As you ride, the herder points toward a distant ridge. There, he says. Fresh pasture. Fresh pasture means moving camp again. Mongols relocated constantly, following the needs of their animals. Your legs are already protesting, and the idea of riding further feels like emotional sabotage. But that's the Mongol way movement. Adaptation, relentless practicality. Your horse makes a sudden small jump to avoid a hole, and you make a noise that is neither brave nor dignified. The herder glances back with a grin. You sound like a young goat, he says. I'm trying my best, you mutter, which only makes him laugh harder. The horse slows, sensing your rising panic. Animals here aren't just transport, they're sensitive, almost intuitive. They pick up your fear, your hesitation, your attempts at bravery. You pat its neck, awkwardly. Please don't let me fall, you whisper. The horse flicks an ear, as if amused, and continues walking with steady patience. By midday, your thighs are burning, your back is a single continuous complaint, and your hands ache from gripping the reins. But you stayed on. You rode without catastrophic failure. That counts as a massive win on the steppe scoreboard. When you finally stop, you slide off the saddle with the grace of someone whose body has forgotten how standing works. Your legs wobble uncontrollably. Someone hands you a skin of water. You drink greedily, feeling like you've survived something dramatic, even if the Mongols consider this a light warm-up. The trainer nods at you. You'll get better, he says. Or you won't, but the horse will. Comforting. As you walk beside the animals toward the next grazing area, you realize that life here isn't about mastering everything at once. It's about constantly negotiating with danger, discomfort, and the sharp edges of the natural world. You're learning, slowly, that in the Mongol Empire, you survive by building relationships with the land, with the people, and most importantly, with the horse, who now tolerates your existence. The wind picks up again, tugging at your coat. The steppe stretches endlessly ahead of you, and your horse nudges your shoulder once, almost encouragingly, as if acknowledging that you're trying even if the rest of the day is poised to test you again. Your legs still feel like undercooked noodles when you reach the new grazing site, but the herd doesn't wait for you to recover. The animals move with the confidence of creatures that have been doing this for thousands of years, and you trail behind like someone who accidentally signed up for the advanced class. The Mongol diet is about to become your next ordeal, and if you thought the riding was difficult, your stomach is about to stage a protest it can't win. You're handed a bowl almost immediately, because Mongol hospitality is strong, and also because they can see in your eyes that you're approximately 5 minutes from fainting. Inside the bowl is something white, curdled, and aggressively fragrant. This, you're told, is kurud dried curds that have the emotional texture of chalk and the flavor profile of depends on your courage. You take a cautious nibble. It's sour, crumbly, and somehow both lighter and heavier than you expect. Your brain pauses to recalibrate. It's not bad, but it's definitely not a muffin. A mainstream fact to ground you. Nomads relied heavily on dairy. Fermented mare's milk, dried curds, clotted cream, and cheese were the backbone of daily nutrition. Agriculture was sparse on the steppe, so meat and dairy did most of the heavy lifting. Fruits and vegetables existed mostly as rumors. You chew your curd slowly, trying to appear respectful. A child nearby pops an entire piece into their mouth like it's candy. This is humbling. Then comes the real test airag again. Freshly poured, extra fizzy. Someone hands it to you with pride, which means you can't refuse. You brace yourself and drink. It's cold, slightly sharp, and still tastes like yogurt that wants to pick a fight. You cough once. A herder pats your back, not unkindly, but with the amused expression of someone watching a baby camel attempt its first steps. You get used to it, he says. No, I won't, you think. But you smile anyway. Lunch is more promising. A pot is placed over the fire, heating what looks like strips of boiled meat, still steaming in the chilly air. It's mutton. Of course, Mongols lived on sheep and goats. You're handed a knife and told to carve off what you need. The meat is hearty, chewy, and tastes like survival distilled into edible form. It's simple, warm, and satisfying. Finally, something your stomach doesn't interpret as a threat. A quirky tidbit you may enjoy. Mongols sometimes cooked meat by putting hot stones inside animal carcasses, creating a kind of pressure cooker centuries before anyone thought to patent it. Imagine the innovation required to look at a pile of rocks and a sheep and think, yes, these belong together. The dish korkhog is smoky, tender, and incredibly delicious. You hope you'll be around long enough to try it. After eating, your mind feels clearer. Your body feels grounded. The steppe is still unforgiving, but with some calories inside you, it feels a little less hostile. The sun climbs higher, warming your shoulders, and briefly you think, maybe this isn't so bad. Then someone hands you a strip of dried meat that has the density of a medieval textbook. It's borts, the nomad's ultimate survival food, lightweight, long-lasting, almost impossible to chew until you've soaked it in water. You bend it, and it barely moves. You attempt to bite it, and your teeth politely decline the assignment. A warrior sees your struggle, takes the strip, cracks it cleanly in half with his bare hands, and gives you the easier piece. You thank him, trying not to feel like you're starring in a low-budget comedy. Historians still argue whether the Mongol diet gave them a significant advantage over more grain-heavy societies. Some believe the protein-rich meals boosted strength and endurance, while others think the key factor was simply that Mongols could eat on the move, wasting no time in battle or travel. Either way, the results speak for themselves. You, however, feel like you've just completed an exam you didn't study for. As the afternoon deepens, the camp hums with activity. Dairy is churned. Meat is cut and hung to dry. Someone stirs a pot of broth that smells like comfort distilled to its simplest form. You see a woman pouring milk into a skin bag and kneading it rhythmically to make fermented cheese. Everything here is purposeful. Nothing is wasted. Even the bones of animals will later become tools, weapons, or soup stock. You realize food isn't just sustenance, it's strategy. It's mobility. It's a cultural backbone that allowed the Mongols to travel light, strike fast, and endure environments that would flatten most armies. The diet isn't glamorous, but it works, and you feel the first small spark of respect light up inside you for the food and for the people who lived on it. At some point, a laughing boy offers you a bowl of something warm and surprisingly fragrant, sute tsai, salty milk tea brewed with brick tea leaves. You sip it cautiously, expecting chaos, but it's lovely, comforting, a liquid blanket. You sigh with relief, and the boy grins proudly, as if he personally invented the recipe. As evening approaches, the air cools again, and dinner begins. It's hearty, hot, and mercifully not fizzy. You eat with both hands, surrounded by people who seem forged by wind and endurance, and as your stomach finally stops panicking, you feel a strange peace settle into your bones. You might not master horse riding anytime soon, but at least you won't starve. The wind whistles across the grass, and you pull your coat tighter. The Mongol diet may seem harsh, repetitive, or unusual, but out here, it's exactly what keeps you alive. Night slips across the steppe like a dark animal settling over its territory, and you immediately learn that Mongol cold isn't simply an inconvenience, it's a personality. One that does not care about your plans, your comfort, or your fragile modern optimism. The temperature plummets with the swiftness of a bad mood, and you wrap your deal around yourself until you resemble a disgruntled dumpling. Still, the cold finds you. It always finds you. You step outside the ger for some air, or rather, air steps into you, because the wind rushes in first, cold enough to make your eyelashes stiffen. Your breath forms clouds that drift away like tiny ghost versions of yourself abandoning ship. The ground beneath your boots has turned rigid and glassy, and the moonlight makes the frozen grass glitter in a way that feels beautiful and slightly evil. A herder nearby chuckles at your expression. "Cold?" he asks. "This is illegal," you reply. He laughs harder. "Here's your mainstream historical fact. Mongolian winters can sink to 40 degrees Celsius and sometimes lower. And these weren't rare events, they were standard seasonal greetings. The empire's people survived, thanks to thick felt jurs, layer upon layer of clothing, and the sheer stubbornness of people who refused to negotiate with nature. You walk a few steps and immediately regret it. The cold goes through your boots, through your socks, and directly into your soul. You try wiggling your toes. They do not respond. It's like trying to text someone who blocked you. The wind hits again, harder, as if saying, "Let me remind you who's in charge here." You duck inside the jur again, cheeks stinging. Warmth hits you immediately. Not cozy warmth, but hard-earned warmth, generated by fire, proximity, and the determination of several humans refusing to freeze. The stove in the center crackles, radiating heat that feels almost sacred. You sit close enough to toast one side of your body, while the other remains, firmly in Ice Age mode. Across the room, someone is mending a coat with thick thread. Another is slicing frozen meat that chips like wood. A baby sleeps, wrapped like a tiny wool burrito. Everyone seems perfectly at ease. You, meanwhile, are still trying to process the fact that your fingers have stopped behaving like fingers. A quirky tidbit enters your night. Mongols used to warm themselves by placing hot stones under their clothing before long rides. Yes, portable rocks of comfort. You briefly consider asking for one, but you worry they'll hand you something. The temperature of molten lava to toughen you up. Better not. The wind rattles the jur walls rhythmically, almost like drumming. You watch as the felt covering pulses gently with each gust. Gurs are surprisingly sturdy. Their circular shape lets the wind roll around them rather than slamming against flat surfaces. Historians still argue whether this architectural brilliance developed purely from nomadic necessity or if it carried echoes of older shamanic beliefs about circles representing protection. Either way, you're grateful for it. Your host gestures for you to help with the fire. You toss in a chunk of dried dung, a perfectly normal fuel source here, but still a moment your modern brain needs a second to process. It ignites quickly, sending a warm glow across the room. You feel oddly proud, like you've contributed to civilization. Then loud, crashing noises erupt outside, and you jolt upright. "Wolves?" you whisper, suddenly imagining several dozen pairs of glowing eyes. "No," your host says calmly. "Just the wind shifting the sleds." You nod, pretending you weren't ready to launch into full dramatic panic. Soon it's time to sleep. And you're handed a bedroll made of sheepskin that looks like it could withstand a small apocalypse. You settle in near the stove, grateful for the heat, though you can still feel cold sneaking in at the edges, like uninvited thoughts. The family, they arranges themselves in a practiced formation. Closest to the fire are the elders, followed by children, then adults in the outer ring. You are placed somewhere in the middle, mostly to prevent you from freezing out of pure inexperience. As you lie there, listening to the wind lash the sides of the gur, you realize something important. The cold shapes everything. Movement patterns, clothing, daily rhythms, the very culture itself. Survival isn't passive. It's a constant negotiation, a deliberate act repeated over and over, night after night. Your toes finally begin to thaw, tingling painfully as sensation returns. You shift slightly, and the person beside you mumbles something that sounds like, "Stop moving, you're letting the cold in." You whisper a quick apology, then lie perfectly still, afraid to breathe too deeply in case you accidentally create an air pocket. You eventually drift into a half-sleep, where the crackling fire blends with the wind's low howl, creating a strange, wild lullaby. Your last coherent thought is that you've made it through your first real Mongolian night. Barely. And with the soft dread that tomorrow brings new challenges and zero sympathy from the climate. Morning doesn't so much arrive as it ambushes you. The cold wakes you before the sun does, sneaking under your blanket in thin, malicious streams, reminding you that the steppe operates on a policy of equal opportunity discomfort. You blink awake, stiff, groggy, and about as flexible as a frozen baguette. Someone stokes the fire with the calm efficiency of a person who's been battling winter since infancy, and you wonder if you'll ever feel your toes again. You step outside the jur, expecting a crisp chill. Instead, the world assaults you with heat. Blazing, dry, sun-bright heat. The kind that slaps you across the face the moment you breathe. If last night felt like sleeping inside a walk-in freezer, this morning feels like you've stumbled into a convection oven set to extra spicy. Welcome to Mongol summer, where the temperature swings between seasons, with the emotional stability of a medieval soap opera. The sun is already high, glaring down like a judgmental spotlight. The sky is an enormous, pitiless blue, wide and empty, offering no clouds, no mercy, and definitely no shade. You shield your eyes with your hand, but it's pointless. The light bounces off everything, the grass, the pale soil, even your own clothing. It's like nature installed reflective flooring without consulting you. A herder walks by, completely unfazed, while you melt quietly like a candle someone forgot about. You get used to it, he says. I don't believe you, you mumble. Mainstream fact for today. Mongol summers regularly soared into extreme temperatures, sometimes reaching 40 degrees Celsius or higher, and the lack of trees meant there was almost nowhere to hide from the sun. If winter tried to freeze you solid, summer tried to roast you, slowly. The steppe is basically nature's all-season rotisserie. Your first task is simple enough: go fetch water. Or at least, that's what you think, until you realize the nearest water source is not near by any civilized definition. The herder points toward a shimmering line in the distance. River's that way, he says. Not too far. Which, in steppe language, translates to, please enjoy your 4-hour hike. You begin walking, your boots crunching dry earth that radiates heat like a griddle. Within minutes, your lips feel parched, your shirt clings to you, and your hairline is reconsidering its relationship with sweat. The wind, which was an icy menace last night, now blasts you with warm, exhausting gusts that carry dust into your eyes, your mouth, your dreams. You pause to catch your breath, and that's when you notice something strange. The horizon wavers. The distant landscape shimmers like it's breathing. You squint. It's a mirage, the steppes' way of teasing you with fake lakes. Historians still argue whether illusions like this influenced Mongol migration patterns, or if they were simply a cruel trick played by the summer sun. But right now, all you know is that your brain is being gently sautéed. You finally reach the river, an actual river, not a hologram, and kneel to scoop water into a skin bag. It's cold, refreshing, and tastes faintly mineral-rich, as if the earth is offering an apology for earlier. You splash your face and feel human again, if only for 5 seconds. While you work, one herder tells you a quirky tidbit about life here. Mongols sometimes used river mud as natural sunscreen. You look at the mud, then at your blistering skin, and seriously consider slathering yourself in it like a confused spa guest. You decide against it for now, but only because your dignity still has a faint pulse. The ride back to camp is hotter. The sun feels closer. The air is so dry it crackles. Your horse plods along, patiently, while you cling to the saddle, sweating out every decision you've ever made. The grass rustles in waves, but even the wind sounds tired. Drink. A woman tells you when you arrive. She hands you a bowl of arki, distilled from fermented milk. It's essentially Mongol vodka. You take one sip and nearly evaporate from the inside out. She laughs. Only a little, she advises. You nod, eyes watering. The camp bustles with people tending to animals, mending tools, and adjusting the felt layers on gers to allow ventilation. Even the dogs, usually energetic, are sprawled in the shade of saddles and carts, panting with their tongues lolling dramatically. To cope with the heat, everyone moves slowly, deliberately. No wasted motion. No rushing. Mongol summer isn't something you push through, it's something you negotiate with. You finally sit down, feeling the day's weight settle on your skin like a warm blanket you didn't ask for. And that's when someone says, time to check the herds. Of course it is. But before you face the next 4 hours of sun, you realize something strange. As brutal as Mongol summer is, it's also breathtaking. The sky glows with an impossible clarity. The grasslands shimmer like fields of gold. Every breeze, however hot, carries the scent of distant earth and dry herbs. It's beautiful in a way that feels ancient and unapologetic. Still, you're sweating like a forgotten dumpling on a hot plate. Life in the Mongol Empire doesn't give you balanced seasons. It gives you extremes. Nights that freeze your bones. Days that bake your skin. And a world that demands you adapt or dissolve in the heat like a mirage. By the time you drag yourself back into camp, the sun is beginning its slow descent, staining the horizon with soft streaks of orange and rose gold. The heat finally loses its grip, loosening like a fist unclenching after a long argument. Shadows stretch across the grass, and the gers glow warmly from within, each one flickering gently like a lantern against the endless plain. You head toward the nearest ger, the one you've been unofficially adopted into, and push aside the felt door flap. Inside, you're immediately greeted by the familiar blend of smoke, wool, milk, and humanity. Yurt life, or ger life, as the Mongols would call it, is its own kind of adventure. Cozy, crowded, chaotic, warm, functional, and occasionally fragrant, in ways your modern nose is still negotiating. You sit down, back cracking in protest, and take a moment to appreciate the space. The ger is circular, supported by wooden lattice walls and a frame of poles rising to meet at a central opening. The tuno that lets out smoke and lets in just enough light to make everything glow amber. The smoke hole is covered with a flap that can be pulled open or shut depending on the weather, though judging by the faint haze drifting around the ceiling, ventilation here is more of an art than a science. Someone hands you a bowl of milk tea, warm and lightly salty. You hold it between your palms, grateful for its grounding heat. Your fingers are still recovering from the wild temperature swings earlier, and the bowl feels like a tiny, comforting anchor. A child scampers past you, nearly tripping over your outstretched legs. Another is crouched on the floor, tying knots in a rope with a level of focus that would put most adults to shame. A woman sits beside the stove, stirring a pot of something that smells hearty and vaguely mysterious. And across the room, an elder slowly carves intricate patterns into a piece of wood, each movement steady and patient. Here's your mainstream fact of the night. Mongol gers were designed for maximum portability. A skilled family could break one down in an hour, load it onto carts or pack animals, and rebuild it just as quickly at the next location. The whole structure was essentially the medieval equivalent of premium camping. Gear lightweight, durable, and optimized for constant relocation. You look around at the organization inside the ger. Every item has a place. Saddles hang neatly on the wall. Tools are arranged in careful order. Cooking vessels sit in a designated spot, their handles pointing the same way. Even the bedrolls are stacked methodically. The Mongols believed that order brought harmony, and clutter invited misfortune. Which is unfortunate for you, because your personal belongings currently resemble the aftermath of a small tornado. You try to shift them discreetly into something resembling neatness. A young girl watches you silently, eyes narrowed with dramatic judgment. She doesn't say anything, but the message is clear. Whatever that is, it's not order. Meanwhile, smoke from the stove swirls around the room, adding a soft haze that catches the firelight. You breathe in, and your eyes sting, not painfully, but enough to remind you that centuries ago, this was simply daily life. No chimneys with perfect airflow, no air purifiers humming quietly in the corner, just the constant scent of burning dung, wool, and stew. Historians still argue whether the design of gers evolved primarily from environmental needs or deeper spiritual traditions. Circular shapes, after all, are common in many steppe belief systems. But whatever the origins, it works. It's warm, it's safe, it's home. At least, it's home for everyone else. You are still adjusting. Dinner arrives in steaming bowls, mutton broth rich with fat that clings to the surface like tiny shimmering suns. You sip it, savoring the warmth as it slides down your throat. It's surprisingly soothing, especially after a day spent being alternately roasted and chilled like a medieval rotisserie experiment. The flavor is simple but satisfying, a kind of edible reassurance. As you eat, someone begins telling a story, something about an ancestor outrunning a storm on horseback after misreading a shaman's warning. The ger fills with laughter as the storyteller gestures wildly. mimicking galloping motions that nearly knock over a pot. You don't catch every detail, but you feel the rhythm of the room shifting, softening, settling into evening. Then comes your quirky tidbit. Mongols often believed that singing inside the ger could tame the wind outside. A young woman begins humming low, sweet, steady, and the melody vibrates gently through the wooden poles. You swear the wind quiets slightly, just enough to make you wonder if there's some truth to the idea. Later, as people prepare for sleep, the chaos ramps up. Bedrolls appear. Children argue over placement. Someone knocks over a ladle. A goat outside bleats with dramatic urgency. The ger becomes a ballet of elbows, blankets, and whispered instructions. You do your best to blend in, but at one point you accidentally sit on a cushion that apparently holds ceremonial significance. Gasps echo. You freeze. Then thankfully, the elder waves it, off with a chuckle, shaking his head as if to say, "Foreigners." You settle into your sheepskin bed again, listening as the fire softens into embers. The ger creaks softly in the shifting wind, but it feels solid, like a protective bubble against the vastness outside. You close your eyes. Warmth seeps into your bones. The smell of smoke and wool becomes almost hypnotic. And just as you begin to drift, someone mumbles sleepily. Don't kick the wall. Spirits get annoyed. Good to know. Life in a Mongol ger isn't glamorous. It's crowded, smoky, loud, and sometimes confusing. But it's also warm, communal, and impossibly alive. And tonight, surrounded by people who've spent their whole lives battling the steppe with grit and laughter, you feel a little less like an outsider and a little more like someone who might just survive another day. You wake to the sound of bleating and hooves thudding against the packed earth, not alarmingly close, but close enough that you're reminded of your true job out here. Herding. Not glamorously, not heroically, just tirelessly. The Mongols depend on their animals for everything: food, clothing, transport, wealth, and status. And those animals depend on you to keep them alive, moving, and mostly out of trouble. You sit up, hair flattened on one side, dignity questionable, and stretch your stiff limbs. Your spine crackles like a campfire. The ger is already buzzing with activity. Everyone else seems fully awake, fully functional, and fully immune to morning misery. You, meanwhile, still feel like you got in a fight with a mattress and lost. Outside, the dawn light washes the steppe in pale gold, and you're immediately hit with the earthy smell of livestock, dew, and dust, nature's version of a triple-shot espresso. Dozens of sheep and goats are already milling about. Horses snort impatiently. Cows wander with the deliberate slowness of creatures who know you can't make them hurry. A herder hands you a long stick and gestures for you to follow. We move them, he says simply. There are no additional instructions, no beginner tutorial, no step-by-step guide. Just, we move them. Right. You take your place in the loose formation that fans out around the herd. The moment you start walking, the animals begin shifting, trotting, bleating, splitting into subgroups, each one moving with the chaotic confidence of teenagers in a mall. Within seconds, you lose control of at least 8 of them. One goat looks you dead in the eyes and sprints in the opposite direction, as if daring you to chase it. Another decides to test gravity by attempting to climb a rock that is absolutely not climbable. This is fine. Everything is fine. Here's your mainstream historical fact. The Mongol Empire ran on herds. Sheep, goats, horses, cattle, camels. They were the original multi-tool. Wool for clothing, milk for food, meat for sustenance, animals for transport. Entire family fortunes lived and breathed, and occasionally pooped, right here on the plains. You jog after a stray goat, waving your stick with all the authority of someone who has zero authority. The goat glances back, unimpressed. A boy of maybe 9 whistles once, and somehow the entire scattered subgroup returns to formation instantly. You stare at him, panting. He shrugs, as if saying, "It's nothing." For him, it is nothing. Herding is in his muscles, his instincts, his bones. You're just trying not to collapse into the grass. As the sun climbs higher, the work intensifies. Herding is constant course correction, constant scanning, constant adjusting. It's like trying to guide 1,000 fuzzy opinions across an open plain. You walk. You whistle. You wave your arms. You trip over tufts of grass. You get your stick caught in a bush. A horse snorts at you with thinly veiled judgment. And always, the weather threatens to interfere. The wind picks up, of course it does, turning your hair into a chaotic experiment in aerodynamics. Dust lifts and dances across the ground, getting into your nose, your ears, your soul. Somewhere behind you, two horses suddenly decide they dislike each other today and start kicking dirt in a miniature showdown. Someone shouts, corralling them with the ease of a conductor guiding a symphony. You try to mimic their technique and succeed only in startling a small sheep, who bleats like you, insulted its entire lineage. A quirky tidbit to brighten your suffering. Mongol herders sometimes trained eagles to help guard flocks from predators. Yes, giant birds with talons the size of your palm. You glance around, hoping today's herding session does not involve a surprise eagle demonstration. You're not emotionally ready. After hours of moving animals across uneven ground, your legs ache, your shoulders burn, and your face feels sandblasted. But you're learning slowly. You begin to anticipate how the herd shifts when one animal wanders. You notice which goats are troublemakers. You figure out how to guide the horses without yelling at them like a confused tourist. Historians still argue whether herding shaped Mongol warfare, or vice versa, whether chasing half-wild animals across unpredictable terrain created the mindset that later steamrolled entire kingdoms. But the connection is obvious as you work. Herding teaches awareness, swift decision-making, coordination, and focus under pressure. All things your body is now painfully acquiring. By midday, you stop by a small patch of shade cast by a cart, gulping down water that tastes like melted diamonds after the morning's exertion. A herder hands you a hunk of dried curd. For strength, he says. For suffering, you whisper after biting it. He laughs. The herd moves again as the day stretches into afternoon. The Mongols treat this labor not as drudgery, but as a rhythm, a pulse that ties their lives to the land. Animals wander. People redirect. Weather intrudes. People adapt. It's a constant dance you're just beginning to memorize. Later, while guiding a line of goats over a slope, you suddenly lose sight of the herd for a moment. Panic flares. You dash up the incline, slip on loose stones, and fall in the most unheroic way imaginable. When you stand, brushing dust from your sleeves, you spot everyone already gathered at the bottom of the hill, waiting. The 9-year-old boy squints at you and says, "You took the long way." You nod, out of breath. "I'm exploring shortcuts." He considers this, then nods back. "Good. Just go faster." "Sure. No problem." When the day finally ends, and you return to camp with the herd safely intact, a strange pride settles into your tired body. Herding here is not glamorous, but it's essential. It keeps families alive. It keeps the rhythm of the nomadic world beating. And, today, despite every misstep, every stubborn goat, every dusty gust of wind you helped, and your legs only feel like they're made of wet rope, progress. By the next morning, your muscles are staging a formal complaint. Everything aches: your thighs, your back, even a few places you didn't know had nerve endings. But today isn't about herding. Today, you're told, is about learning the most essential Mongol skill after surviving the weather. Archery on horseback. A phrase that strikes fear into the deepest, weakest corner of your soul. You follow your trainer to a flat stretch of steppe, where targets have been set up, circular bundles of reed and hide propped on wooden frames. They look harmless enough. They are not. They are your destiny for the day. And destiny looks suspiciously like physical humiliation waiting to happen. Your horse is already there, tied to a post and looking incredibly refreshed compared to you. It flicks its ears lazily when it sees you, as if thinking, "Ah, yes." The clumsy one returns. Your trainer hands you a Mongol bow, short, recurved, deceptively powerful. You pull the string experimentally and nearly dislocate your shoulder. The trainer shakes his head, amused. "Use your back," he says. "Not your arms. Right. Your back. The thing currently made of pain noodles." You square your stance and try again. This time, the string pulls back smoother. The bow hums with potential energy, like it knows you have no idea what you're doing, but is willing to humor you. You aim at the nearest target. You breathe in. You release. Your arrow sails majestically through the air, and then, plops into the grass, 3 meters short. The trainer nods slowly. The grass is very frightened, he says. A nearby child snickers. Mainstream fact for today. Mongols trained with composite bows capable of immense draw weights, giving their arrows lethal range and power. Warriors could shoot accurately from horseback at full, gallop forward, sideways, and even backward. Yes, backward. Meanwhile, you're struggling to hit something that's standing still and generously large. But practice continues. Your trainer mounts his horse, demonstrating how to shoot while moving. He rides in a smooth arc, drawing and releasing arrows so quickly it looks like the bow is doing half the work for him. Each one hits the target with a satisfying thud. Then he gestures for you to try. Your stomach sinks. Mounting the horse takes you 3 tries, and the emotional support of everyone watching. Once you're finally in the saddle, you wobble like you're balancing on a tightrope made of disappointment. The horse shifts under you, sensing your anxiety. You pat its neck. "Please don't let me die," you whisper. The trainer clicks his tongue, and your horse starts walking. Walking. And yet somehow, this still feels too fast. You pull an arrow from your quiver, nearly drop it, fumble, recover, and then miracle of miracles, you knock it correctly onto the string. You draw. The horse moves. Your stomach flips. You shoot. Your arrow flies at a heroic angle and misses everything by several time zones. The trainer calls out encouragingly, "Better!" You do not believe him. You try again, and again, and again. Hours pass. You sweat through your clothing. Your fingers blister. Your inner thighs feel like they've been personally scolded by history. But slowly, painfully, incrementally, you improve. One arrow grazes the target. Another actually hits the outer ring. A third lands somewhere in the vicinity of not a total failure. A quirky tidbit to brighten the moment. According to some accounts, Mongol children practice balance by standing on a galloping horse and shooting at rolling targets. You think about how you can barely sit on a walking horse, and you briefly consider retiring from life. As the sun climbs, the trainer ups the difficulty. "Now trot," he says. Trotting is worse. It's like trying to shoot during a mild earthquake. You bounce. Your bow wobbles. Your arrow angles dangerously toward a cow minding its own business. You abort that shot before you start an international incident. "Good reflexes," your trainer says. "I almost shot Bartar's cow," you reply weakly. He shrugs. Cow should not stand there. Historians still argue whether the Mongol cavalry's deadliness came more from their training or their saddle technology. Mongol saddles were high-fronted, high-backed, and amazingly stable, giving riders leverage and balance during wild movements. You silently thank whoever invented them, because without that support, you would have face-planted into the steppe long ago. Finally, after what feels like years, the trainer waves you to stop. You dismount and nearly fall over as your legs forget how to behave. Your horse nudges you affectionately, either encouragement or pity. The trainer examines one of your arrows stuck in the target's edge. "You did well," he says. You blink. "I did?" He nods. You hit the target. Most beginners hit themselves. Comforting, deeply comforting. As you walk back to camp, bow in hand, dust on your face, sweat in your hair, and dignity nowhere to be found, you feel something unexpected. Pride. You're exhausted, bruised, and slightly sunburned, but you did something that once felt impossible. Life in the Mongol Empire doesn't demand perfection. It demands persistence, adaptation, willingness to try again, even when your arms feel like wet laundry. And today, for all your mistakes, you didn't quit. You survived your first day of archery on horseback barely, and you're already dreading tomorrow's training. But for now, as the wind sweeps over the steppe and your horse walks patiently beside you, you feel a quiet connection forming. Not mastery, not competence, but a beginning. And beginnings matter. By the time you drag yourself back into camp, legs trembling like they're made of hopes and chewing gum, you imagine someone will clap you on the back and congratulate you for surviving horseback archery without accidentally skewering yourself. Instead, you walk straight into something far more complicated. Tribal politics, the invisible web of alliances, rivalries, customs, and unspoken rules that quietly determine who prospers, who struggles, and who mysteriously finds themselves caring for the worst-tempered goat in the entire herd. You don't even get a chance to drink water before you feel it. An odd tension in the air, subtle but unmistakable. People stand in small clusters, speaking in hushed tones. Two men pass each other without making eye contact, which is unusual in a camp where everyone usually greets everyone. Even the dogs seem alert, circling cautiously instead of lounging in the dust. "What's happening?" you whisper to the old herder beside you. He shrugs. Families argue. Leaders choose sides. It is normal. You blink. Normal? You've been here long enough to know that normal on the steppe usually means mild chaos with consequences. He gestures with his chin toward a group of men gathered around a saddle stand. "Those are the Taichud," he says. "Over there, the Jadaran." Two families, two lineages, both tracing their ancestry back through legendary warriors, Khans, and enough miniature feuds to fill several dramatic history books. The issue today? You're not entirely sure. No one tells you directly, possibly because they assume you'd misunderstand and ask too many questions. All you know is that someone insulted someone else's horse, or tent, or honor, or grandmother, or possibly all four. Here's your mainstream fact. Mongol society was built around tribes and clans, large extended families linked by real or claimed ancestry. Allegiances mattered deeply. A single dispute between two clans could erupt into multi-year conflict, reshaping entire regions. Even during the height of the empire, when Khans tried to impose unity, rivalries simmered under the surface. And today, you're standing in the middle of one. A man approaches you suddenly tall, stern, with a shaved head, and an expression that says he has survived enough winters to be unimpressed by anything you're doing. He studies you. "You are with the Borjigin camp?" he asks. You swallow. "Aye. Sleep in one of their jurs." "Yes." He nods slowly. "Then you should stand on that side." He points to a very specific patch of grass. You look at the grass, then at the man, then at the other side where a different clan is gathering. You realize he's telling you to physically position yourself in alignment with one faction. You also realize that you, a sunburned foreigner who still occasionally loses arguments with goats, have absolutely no business choosing sides in a centuries-old rivalry. A younger woman near you mutters, "Don't step in the wrong place." You nod, pretending this is a rule you already knew. A quirky tidbit to lighten the mood. Some Mongol clans historically used secret family passwords, verbal cues exchanged during night watches or raids to identify allies. Imagine whispering a code word in the dark to prove your clan identity while avoiding an accidental arrow to the face. Tonight, you're very grateful no one expects you to recite family passwords, because you'd probably fumble them like you fumbled your first bow shot. One elder woman calls everyone to sit. A long line of people settle into a semicircle. Men on one side, women on the other, children weaving in and out like cats. You sit too, unsure if you belong, but hoping your confused but respectful expression helps. At the center of the circle sits the Noyan, the camp leader, a weathered man with sharp eyes and a soft-spoken voice. "There was a dispute," he says simply. Everyone waits. Apparently, one clan's horses wandered into the pasture space. Another clan considered theirs. Boundaries on the steppe aren't exactly fences and property lines, they're agreements. Agreements drawn from memory, tradition, and informal negotiations. So when one cluster of animals crosses an invisible line, it's not a simple mistake, it's disrespect. The Noyan listens quietly. People from each side speak in turn, calmly but firmly. You note that almost no one raises their voice, which is surprising considering how angry some look. Mongols value composure. Loudness is usually reserved for music, battles, and arguing with stubborn livestock. Historians still argue whether these clan tensions strengthened Mongol unity through shared hardship, or weakened it through constant infighting. But sitting here, you can see how fragile balance can be when everyone depends on shared land, shared resources, and shared pride. At one point, a teenager from one clan steps forward and starts passionately defending his family's horses. He speaks so fast, you only catch fragments, something about grazing patterns and "my uncle's patience finally running out." Several people murmur. Someone behind you says, "He speaks boldly for one so young." Another replies, "Boldness is useful if he learns when to stop." You silently hope he stops soon. Eventually, the Noyan raises a hand. The camp falls into instant quiet. He speaks softly, but with the authority of someone used to bending storms and tempers alike. The horses will be returned. The families will share the pasture for 7 days. After that, we reconsider. Both sides nod. A few grumbles, but mostly acceptance. The tension dissolves, if not entirely, then enough to let people breathe again. Everyone rises. The meeting ends as abruptly as it began. People go back to work. Children start chasing each other. Goats resume being goats. You stand there, dazed, unsure how such a serious confrontation resolved with surprising ease. You glance at your trainer, who stands beside you smirking. "You see," he says, "politics is harder than archery." You believe him. As the sun sets, painting the camp in warm, forgiving hues, you sit by the fire and reflect. Tribal politics isn't written on paper. It's lived daily, intimately, constantly renegotiated. On the steppe, survival isn't just about weather or food or horses. It's about people, families, loyalties, alliances, unspoken expectations. And today, you manage not to anger anyone, misstep into the wrong patch of grass, or accidentally pledge allegiance to a rival clan. Honestly, that's progress. The next morning, the camp stirs before the sun fully lifts its sleepy head over the horizon. You step outside the ger, rubbing your eyes, expecting a calm start to the day, maybe some tea, maybe a gentle breeze, maybe 5 minutes where nothing is actively trying to test your survival skills. You should know better by now, because today, you feel it instantly. The atmosphere is different, tighter, sharper. There's a hum beneath every movement, a focused stillness that signals one thing: conflict is coming. Not a petty clan disagreement this time, not an argument over pasture lines. No, this is the real thing. Mongol scouts ride back into camp at high speed, horses snorting clouds of steam. Their faces are grim, their words are brief. And suddenly everyone around you moves with a purpose so intense you feel like you stumbled onto the set of a historical action sequence without reading the script. A herder-turned-warrior tosses you a water skin. "Arm yourself," he says. "With what?" you ask, already regretting the question. He shrugs. "You have a bow now. Try not to shoot yourself." Comforting. Mainstream fact for today. The Mongol Empire was forged through near-constant warfare raids, retaliation, territory defense, expansion campaigns, and clan battles. Even peaceful stretches were punctuated by sudden eruptions of violence. The nomadic world was always shifting, always moving, and always carrying the possibility of armed conflict just beneath the surface. And today is one of those days. Within minutes, the entire camp transforms. Gers are secured, horses are saddled, weapons emerge from bundles, bows, spears, lances, heavy shields for those who fight up close. The wind sweeps across the steppe, carrying tension like a scent. You're not being sent to the front lines. Everyone here values their arrows too much to waste one on you, but you're definitely being included. Your job: help manage the horses, stay behind the main force, assist with supplies, and above all, don't get in the way. You nod vigorously. Not getting in the way is your main skill. As the warriors assemble, their formation shocks you. There's no chaos, no shouting, just silent, efficient preparation. Men and women alike ride to their designated positions. Older teens join them, their expressions serious. Even a few elders mount up veterans whose experience is worth 10 eager youths. One of the scouts points toward the north. "They took our horses," he says. "We take them back." A horse raid. Of course. Quirky tidbit. Stealing horses was practically a competitive sport on the steppe. In some eras, raids were considered an acceptable, if risky, way to gain livestock. People guarded their herds with military-level vigilance. And losing a horse wasn't just inconvenient, it threatened survival. Your camp can't let that go unchallenged. The warriors ride out, and you follow behind with the support group. Your horse moves at a steady trot, and you cling to the saddle like someone trying not to become an anecdote. The grass rushes beneath you, the sky stretches infinitely above, and the air vibrates with anticipation. Historians still argue whether Mongol warfare was shaped by their pastoral lifestyle, or if their pastoral lifestyle was sharpened by warfare. But as you ride across the steppe in the cool morning light, you understand how inseparable the two are. You spot dust rising in the distance, a small rival group driving stolen horses hard toward their territory. The Mongol warriors around you shift effortlessly into formation. Two flanking lines peel off like wings extending outward. The center pushes forward. A handful of archers notch arrows. The rival riders glance back too late. Your camp charges. The thunder of hooves shakes your bones. Dust swirls. Boughs snap. Arrows whistle through the air with terrifying precision. You can barely keep your balance while the warriors around you move as if the horses are part of their own bodies. The rival raiders scatter. Some peel off in panic. Others attempt to counter-strike. But they're outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and outskilled. Mongol strategy is overwhelming speed, coordination, and absolute fearlessness. You don't fight, but you witness it all. The chaos, the control, the terrifying grace. Your job is to secure recovered horses and lead them away from the fight. It sounds simple, except these are frightened, high-strung animals who do not care that you're helping them. They want to sprint into the sun and never look back. You grab a lead rope. A horse jerks, nearly pulling your shoulder from its socket. Another bumps you hard enough that you reconsider all your life choices. But somehow, through sheer fear and flailing determination, you manage to guide a small cluster away from the skirmish. Moments later, it's over. As quickly as it began, the raiders retreat, leaving behind dust and hoofprints. 3 Mongol warriors ride after them to ensure they keep running. The rest regroup around the reclaimed herd, checking for injuries. A few horses are nicked, a few humans are bruised. But overall, the camp won decisively. Your trainer rides up, grinning. "You lived," he says. You nod, breathless. "Barely." He shrugs. "Barely is enough." On the ride back, the mood is lighter. Victorious. People laugh, clap shoulders, exchange jabs. Someone teases someone else about falling off their horse mid-charge. Apparently a small ditch was involved. Even the dogs trot proudly beside the returning warriors, tails high. As you lead the reclaimed horses back into camp, the reality sinks in. Life in the Mongol Empire meant living on a knife edge between peace and conflict. Even when things seemed calm, danger was never far away. Tonight, the tribe will feast. Stories will be told. Songs will rise into the night. But tomorrow, who knows? Out here, the line between ordinary day and sudden warfare is thin, fragile, and constantly shifting like a horse's mood or the Mongolian sky. And somehow, despite the fear, you feel more alive than you have since arriving. You sleep deeply that night, so deeply in fact, that when someone kicks your foot at dawn and tells you to get up, you jolt awake thinking a horse has stepped on you. Sadly, the truth is more intimidating. Today isn't about herding or raids or balancing your dignity on a saddle. Today is about military discipline, the Mongol kind, which is to say, the toughest, strictest, least negotiable version that medieval humanity ever produced. You stumble out of the gur, rubbing your eyes, and immediately see the gathering. Warriors stand in tidy ranks, no lounging, no chatting, no adjusting their boots. Their horses wait behind them, already saddled and alert. Even the animals seem to know this morning is serious. Your trainer waves you over with the casual air of someone who enjoys your suffering a little too much. "Today, we drill," he says. "Like, practice?" you ask hopefully. He shakes his head. "No, drill." The distinction becomes clear immediately. A man steps forward, broad, scarred, and wearing the expression of someone who has personally punched a storm cloud. He is the Ba-Tur, the camp's chief disciplinarian, and he wastes no time. He shouts a command. Everyone moves at once. And you? You move too, but half a heartbeat late, which earns you a brief, withering stare from the Ba-Tur that feels like daylight suddenly gained teeth. Mainstream fact to brace yourself with. The Mongol military was one of the most disciplined forces in history. Orders were absolute. Disobedience wasn't a mistake. It was treason. And punishments ranged from public humiliation to execution. Sometimes for the entire unit, because collective responsibility kept everyone alert. When your survival depends on every rider doing their job, There is no room for individual improvisation. You swallow hard. The first drill is formation riding. Easy, right? You just ride in a line. You mount your horse, grip the reins, and join the others. The line begins moving slowly. You breathe in relief, then the pace doubles, then triples. Then the riders beside you suddenly peel off into a wedge formation like a flock of birds shifting direction mid-air. You, meanwhile, overshoot your position by several horse lengths and nearly collide with the guy in front of you. The Ba'atur's voice cuts through the air. Again, you circle back. The drill repeats, and repeats, and repeats. Soon your thighs are screaming, your back aches, your hands blister against the reins, and your brain feels like it's trying to do calculus at highway speed. A rider beside you, a teenager with zero business being this competent, leans over and mutters, "You're drifting left." "I'm trying not to," you hiss. "Stop trying. Just don't drift." Very helpful. Thank you, prodigy child. Next comes the 10-group maneuver. Small units acting as one. Mongols trained in decimal formations, groups of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. Today, you're assigned to a 10 group, which means you're expected to move precisely in sync with 9 riders who have been doing this since the age of 4. The moment the leader raises 2 fingers, the whole group breaks into a semicircle. You panic. Your horse panics. You end up creating a shape that is technically a semicircle, if you squint hard enough and redefine geometry. But Mongols don't yell, they correct. One rider taps your shoulder lightly. "Watch my horse," he says, "not the ground." You try it, and the curve suddenly starts making sense. Another shows you how to shift your weight during rapid turns. Another teaches you how to hold the bow so it doesn't smack your wrist. Someone even adjusts your saddle blanket so it stops sliding. It dawns on you. Discipline here isn't cruelty. It's survival. It's cohesion. It's trust made practical. A quirky tidbit to lighten your trembling soul. Some Mongol units practice by racing in elaborate patterns shaped like animals or symbols, partly as training and partly as entertainment. Imagine 500 riders performing a synchronized giant eagle formation on horseback. Somewhere during this drill, you understand why they did it. They built unity the way musicians build rhythm. Hours pass. Sweat drips down your back. Dust cakes your face. Your horse is breathing hard, but steady, almost reassured by the routine. Then the Ba'atur announces the final drill, discipline test. He signals to a rider in front. The rider gallops forward, stops sharply, fires an arrow into the dirt near a marker, circles back, and returns without a word. The movements are crisp, perfect, silent. You swallow. "You will do it," your trainer says. "No, I won't," you whisper. "You will," he insists. Your horse steps forward like it already signed you up. You take a breath, then another. You kick gently. The horse surges into a gallop. Wind tears at your eyes. Your bow rattles against your side. The marker rushes toward you. You yank the reins too hard. The horse slows abruptly, nearly unseating you. Your stomach lurches. You raise your bow, fingers trembling. You fire. The arrow hits the ground, nowhere near the marker. But it hits, and you didn't fall, and you didn't break anything. You circle back, sweating through your deal. Everyone watches in silence. The Ba'atur nods once. A single nod, but it might as well be a standing ovation. "You passed," your trainer says. "No, I didn't," you mutter. "You did enough," he replies. "Enough is how beginners survive." As you ride back to camp with the others' legs shaking, arms heavy, heart pounding, you realize something important. Mongol discipline wasn't about fear. It was about reliability, predictability, total unity of purpose. Every rider mattered. Every command mattered. Every moment of hesitation mattered. And today, for the first time, you didn't hesitate. You wake the next morning thinking naively that perhaps your body has finally adapted to the Mongol lifestyle. Your back doesn't feel as broken, your legs aren't shaking quite as much, and when you stand, you only make one involuntary noise instead of 6. Progress. Then you hear the horn. A long, low blast that vibrates through the camp like a warning from the sky itself. Your trainer bursts through the ger flap. "Get your horse," he says. "We ride, now." Your momentary confidence shrivels, because today you aren't practicing, you aren't observing, you aren't doing support work from the sidelines. Today, you're joining a lightning-fast Mongol campaign, the very thing that terrified kingdoms across Asia and Europe and built one of the largest empires in human history. You rush to saddle your horse, fumbling only twice a personal record. Warriors tighten straps, check quivers, adjust armor. No shouting, no chaos, just focused efficiency. The sun is barely up, but the energy feels electric. "What's happening?" you ask one rider. He shrugs with calm acceptance. "A message came. An ally needs support. We ride far. Very fast." You nod, pretending this is not the worst news your thighs have heard in their entire existence. Mainstream fact of the day. The Mongols could travel unbelievable distances in shockingly little time. Some sources claim 60 to 100 miles per day, sometimes more, with remounts waiting along hidden routes. Speed wasn't just a tactic, it was a weapon. Today, you're about to experience that weapon firsthand. Your group takes off in waves, the earth vibrating beneath your horse's hooves. Dust rises behind you like a rolling fog. The wind roars in your ears. Your horse stretches into a long, powerful stride, and you cling to the saddle with every desperate muscle you have. "Loosen your grip," your trainer shouts beside you. You shout back, "I am loosening." You are not loosening. The terrain rolls out endlessly, hills, ridges, dips, grasslands that seem to stretch until they fold into the sky. Your legs burn, your teeth rattle. The wind turns your face into a sand-blasted sculpture, yet everyone around you rides with flawless balance, shooting glances at the horizon, adjusting pace, conserving energy. They make it look effortless. You, meanwhile, are trying not to bounce yourself into an isekai. After an hour, you expect a break. You do not get one. After 2 hours, you pray for one. No break. After 3 hours, you begin bargaining with your horse. "Slow down, and I promise never to complain about your attitude again." Your horse ignores you. Eventually, blessedly, the signal goes up. Rest. You dismount and fall onto the ground like a wet sack. A rider passing you mutters, "You look unwell." "I feel worse," you reply. As everyone waters their horses, notice another group approaching a relay team, exchanging fresh mounts for the officers. One rider hands off a message cylinder. Another takes his place instantly. No time wasted. Quirky tidbit. The Mongols operated a pony express system called the Yam, a relay network that allowed messages to cross entire continents with astonishing speed. Some historians compare it to the neural system of the Empire, a communication network so efficient that news could outrun armies. Today, you're watching a tiny part of that network in motion. After a brief rest, long enough for your soul to reattach to your body, but not long enough for comfort, the riding resumes. The pace increases. Your trainer calls out, "Lean forward on the gallop. Save strength." You try. Really. But the horse seems intent on reminding you that you are merely cargo with opinions. Hours blend together. Landscapes shift. The sky expands. Your muscles burn so intensely, you reach a strange state of acceptance. Somewhere, between one ridge and the next, you feel something new. A rhythm. A unity between you and the horse. A moment where bouncing becomes gliding. Breath finds a pattern. The world narrows to hooves and wind and distance. It's fleeting, but it's there. And for a heartbeat, you understand how the Mongols conquered the world. But then you hit a bump and nearly yeet yourself into the sun. Your trainer pretends not to laugh. Historians still argue whether the Mongols' success came more from strategy or sheer endurance. Watching these riders push across the land at such speed, you realize the answer is both. Strategy gave them purpose. Endurance gave them reach. Together, they formed a storm that no empire knew how to face. By late afternoon, the group reaches its rendezvous point, a ridge overlooking a valley. More warriors gather there, banners fluttering, horses stamping the ground. Scouts ride in with updates. Commands ripple through the ranks like wind through grass. Your Camp's leader nods. We ride at dawn tomorrow, he says. Tonight, rest, rest, a word more beautiful than poetry. You collapse onto the ground near your horse, who nudges you with a mix of affection and pity. Someone hands you broth. Someone else throws a blanket over your shoulders. The camp settles into a low hum of preparation, checking arrows, sharing food, tightening saddles. As the stars emerge, sharp and brilliant in the cold sky, you realize you've just survived one of the fastest marches of your life, and you'll be doing it again tomorrow. The Mongol Empire doesn't slow down for anyone, not even for beginners. Tonight, though, you let yourself feel the wonder of it. The vastness of the steppe, the unity of the riders, the raw, relentless power of movement. You're exhausted, you're aching, you're barely conscious. But you're part of the storm now, at least for a little while. Dawn breaks cold and silver. The steppe still quiet except for the faint shifting of horses and the soft murmur of warriors preparing for the day ahead. You wake feeling like someone replaced all your muscles with wet rope and then demanded you perform ballet. Your entire body protests, but your trainer appears beside you anyway, expression firm. Up, he says. Today we take a fortress. You blink. A what? He nods, completely unfazed. A fortress. Or a fortified camp. Depends on what the scouts found. You stare at him, horrified. You barely survived galloping in a straight line yesterday. Now, the Mongol Empire expects you to participate in siege warfare, the thing entire kingdoms spent decades training for. But the Mongols, famously, had no patience for traditional limitations. If a problem existed, whether it was distance, weather, enemies hiding behind stone walls, their solution was always, yes, and we will do it faster. As the sun peaks over the horizon, your group rides. The air is cold enough to sting your cheeks, but adrenaline warms your veins. The land eventually rises into a ridge, and from the top, you spot your destination. A cluster of fortified structures surrounded by wooden palisades, perched beside a river bend. It's not a massive stone-walled castle, more like a defensive camp built by rival nomads or settled tribes, but it's still enough to require strategy. Mainstream fact for today. The Mongols were exceptional at siege warfare, even though they were nomads. They didn't start with complex siege equipment, but they stole, copied, improved, and deployed them with terrifying efficiency. Catapults, trebuchets, siege towers, fire weapons, psychological tactics, the full menu. And even when they didn't have heavy machines, they improvised. Your task today, thankfully, is not storming the walls. You stay with the supply group, securing horses, relaying messages, bringing arrows forward, and helping the engineers, on the steppe, with carts full of tools and ropes and bundles of something that looks suspiciously like fire starters. Your trainer points at a team unloading long poles. Ladders, he says. Just in case. You nod weakly, as if just in case is reassuring. Then you see it. The feigned retreat, one of the Mongols' favorite strategies. A group of expert riders charges toward the palisade, firing arrows in graceful arcs. The defenders respond with their own volleys. Then the Mongols suddenly wheel around and flee chaotically, frantically, perfectly convincingly. The defenders cheer. They surge out of the gate exactly as the Mongols want, because the moment the gate opens, another unit hidden in a dip behind a ridge sprints forward and slams into them. The rival warriors, now outside the safety of their walls, lose the advantage instantly. Mongol archers circle them like hawks. Horses kick up dust that blinds and disorients. It's precise, choreographed, ruthlessly efficient. You're stunned. This is warfare as strategy, not brute force. But the fortress still stands. The defenders retreat back inside, slamming the gate shut. Now comes phase 2. A group of engineers runs forward with burning bundles. They throw them at the walls, which burst into sudden flame. The defenders scramble to douse the fire. While they're distracted, Mongol archers from a nearby ridge rain arrows down over the parapets. Then, as the defenders pull water barrels from one side, a team of warriors pushes ladders up on the opposite side. The Mongols force the defenders to fight in all directions at once. Quirky tidbit time. Some Mongol siege teams used portable shield carts, small wheeled structures covered in hide to approach walls while protected from arrows. Today, You watch a few of these awkward-looking but incredibly effective carts roll forward, archers crouched inside like tactical turtles. The defenders try to counter by throwing rocks, but the carts absorb most of the impact. You're helping carry spare arrows when a man shouts, "Keep low." You duck instantly. An arrow whistles overhead, not aimed at you, but close enough to remind you that today is not an abstract lesson. Historians still debate how Mongols perfected siege tactics so quickly. Some argue they learned from Chinese engineers. Others say Persian and Khwarezmian captives taught them advanced mechanics. Others believe they were simply brilliant at adapting whatever tools they found. Watching them today, you believe all three. The enemy's outer wall buckles. A group of defenders rushes to reinforce it, which is exactly what the Mongols wanted, because on the opposite side, a wedge of riders charges the gate with a battering ram. The impact booms across the valley. Once, twice, the gate cracks. A third hit splinters it. Mongol warriors pour through like a flood, shouting, arrows flying, shields raised. You watch from behind the supply line, heart pounding, as the defenders break some fighting desperately, others fleeing into the river. In less than half an hour, it's over. The Mongols didn't simply overpower the fortress. They outthought it, outmoved it, outtimed it. Your trainer rides up, breathing hard but smiling. "You see," he says, "warfare is not strength, it is patterns." You nod slowly. "Patterns?" He taps his forehead. "Patterns everywhere. We follow them. Or we make them." On the ride back, the warriors speak quietly, reviewing what went well, what went wrong, who rode bravely, who will receive gifts, whose horse deserves extra care. You feel exhausted, shaky, but strangely exhilarated. You didn't fight, but you witnessed the Mongol engine of conquest in motion. Fast, coordinated, merciless, brilliant. You glance back at the quieted fortress. Smoke rises from the broken gate. Horses graze near the captured supplies. The river glints in the sunlight. It strikes you that life in the process. Mongol Empire was built on movement, speed, and adaptability, but also on extraordinary discipline and absolute willingness to innovate. And today, you saw it up close. You're tired. You're overwhelmed. You're aware of how close chaos always sits on this steppe. But you're also beginning to understand how the Mongols became unstoppable. You return to camp late in the day, hoping that the aftermath of the siege means everyone will rest. Maybe eat. Maybe sit quietly. Maybe give your legs a chance to remember what not galloping feels like. But of course, the Mongol Empire has no interest in your comfort. Because today, barely an hour after the siege dust settles, you're assigned to another crucial part of steppe life, traveling the trade routes. Not as a merchant, you can barely keep your saddle straight. Not as a diplomat, you'd probably insult someone's grandmother by accident, and definitely not as a tax collector. No, you're going as an assistant, a humble extra pair of hands for a caravan that needs to move quickly under Mongol protection. Because in the empire, wealth doesn't stay put. It moves. And you're moving with it. You're handed a loaded pack horse docile, thankfully, and told simply, "Stay with the group and do not fall behind." You nod. Falling behind is basically your worst skill. Your caravan consists of wealthy merchants, hardy camel drivers, a few officials, and several warriors, escorting the entire group. Silk bundles, fur packages, sacks of spices, tools, and precious goods hang from saddles and carts. Even the air smells different, like cinnamon, leather, iron, and wool swirling together. You barely have time to eat before you're back on a horse. The caravan rolls forward. The steppe stretches out again. And suddenly, you realize you're no longer moving with a warband. You're moving with the arteries of Eurasia itself. Mainstream fact to anchor you. The Mongols revitalized and protected the Silk Road, turning it into a superhighway of culture, trade, and information. Under their rule, merchants traveled more safely than at almost any other time in medieval history. Bandits feared Mongol patrols more than anything. If you robbed a caravan, they would find you, quickly and creatively. Which explains why your caravan includes armed riders just in case. As the miles roll by, you begin noticing something strange. The steppe looks different from this perspective. You pass temporary camps, traders' posts, and even the occasional stone marker etched with script. The world feels bigger, fuller, more connected than you imagined. This land isn't empty, it's alive with exchange. Around midday, the caravan stops at a yam station, one of the Empire's relay posts. You watch as fresh horses are brought out for the couriers, who swap mounts in mere seconds before dashing off again across the plains. The efficiency is awe-inspiring. The workers at the station greet your group with calm familiarity, handing out water and tea to travelers. You drink deeply. Your tongue feels like it's been living in the desert. One merchant, a cheerful man from Samarkand, laughs at your thirst. "First time on the route?" he asks. You nod. He grins. "Don't worry. The road gets easier once your bones stop rattling." "You mean eventually?" He shrugs. "In theory. After a short rest, you ride on. The land changes as you travel, grass giving way to scrub, then back to tall grass, then to patches of rolling hills. The caravan snakes across the horizon like a long, determined creature. At one point, a group of travelers joins from the East Persians, carrying fine carpets. Later, a small team from the West appears with spice crates and metal tools. It hits you. This network doesn't just move goods, it moves cultures, stories, ideas. Quirky tidbit to amuse you. Some merchants on the Silk Road brought trained monkeys as exotic trade goods. You glance around nervously, half expecting someone to pull a monkey out of a saddlebag. Thankfully, none appear, though based on your recent track record, you feel like a monkey could outride you easily. As the caravan crests a hill, you spot a distant cloud of dust behind you, too large to be a simple traveler. The warriors tense instantly. The caravan slows. You grip the reins tightly. Bandits? The riders draw closer. Your heart beats faster. But then the leading rider pulls up a banner, the familiar colors of a Mongol patrol. Relief washes over the caravan. The patrol approaches and speaks with your escorts. They report that a group of raiders was spotted far to the southeast, but nowhere near your path. Still, the patrol decides to accompany you for part of the route. Their presence brings a noticeable change in the merchants. Shoulders relax, jokes resume. Even the camels seem to grumble less dramatically. Historians still argue whether the Mongol Empire's protection of trade was primarily strategic, strengthening the economy, political, keeping alliances, or cultural, valuing exchange. Most agree it was all three. You agree it's mostly useful for keeping your heart rate below catastrophic levels. Later that evening, you arrive at a riverside encampment, a known stop along the route. Tents rise quickly. Fires spark to life. Someone brews tea thick and fragrant. Someone else grills meat that crackles and smells like heaven after a long day. You help unload the pack animals, your arms trembling with exhaustion, and eat with the group under a sky spilling with stars. Merchants share stories from their homelands. Tales of Indian spices worth more than gold. Rumors of European knights with shiny armor but terrible aim. Legends of Chinese fireworks bright enough to mimic daytime. You listen, mesmerized. The steppe may be harsh, but through the trade routes, it connects worlds you never imagined. And tonight, you feel like you're sitting at the crossroads of humanity. Your trainer eventually finds you, half asleep near a fire, and nudges you gently. "Good day," he says. You nod. "I didn't fall behind," he smirks. "Not yet." The river hums quietly nearby. Camels snort softly. The camp glows like a pocket of warmth in the vast plain. You settle into your blanket, realizing that surviving on the trade routes requires endurance, awareness, and trust, just like everything else in Mongol life. But it also gives you something rare, a glimpse of a world connected by movement rather than walls. And tonight, under the quiet stars, you feel strangely at peace. You wake before sunrise to the soft, rhythmic chanting of someone nearby, low, steady, almost like the hum of wind over distant hills. At first you think you're still dreaming, but when you sit up and glance toward the riverbank, you see a cluster of figures standing in a loose circle, their hands raised, faces calm. The firelight paints their silhouettes in warm gold and gentle shadow. Your mind, still soft with sleep, realizes you've just wandered into the spirit world of Mongol shamanism. You shuffle closer, careful not to intrude. The circle moves like a single living creature, swaying gently, murmuring prayers to beings you've never heard of. The Sky Father, the Earth Mother, the spirits of wind, ancestors who linger near the living. The chanting vibrates in your ribs, in your breath, in the ground under your feet. It's ancient, older than empires, older than kings, older than horses. A woman in heavy robes stirs a pot of smoking herbs that smells like pine, sage, and something wild. She lifts a feathered staff, its beads clinking softly, and begins tracing patterns in the air. The smoke drifts upward, curling in slow spirals toward the still fading stars. One of the escorts notices your presence and gestures for you to sit. "Shaman works at dawn," he whispers. "Good time. Spirits listen." You swallow, unsure how to respond. You've seen warriors here, practical, tactical, ruthless. And yet, beneath all that discipline, lies a deep spiritual heartbeat. Mainstream fact. Shamanism in Mongolia was the primary belief system for centuries, shaping how people understood storms, sickness, omens, and fate. Shamans healed, advised leaders, settled disputes, and protected the tribe from invisible forces. Even after Buddhism's arrival, shamanic traditions remained woven into daily life. You watch as the shaman, a woman with long black braids and a coat embroidered with tiny metal circles, begins singing softly. Her voice is soft but strong, rising and falling like a horse galloping across unseen hills. The sound is hypnotic. You close your eyes for a moment, letting it wash over you. Today we ask for safe paths. Someone whispers beside you. He nods toward the caravan. And clear skies. And strong horses. And quiet spirits. Quiet spirits. You echo. He shrugs. Some spirits talk too. Much. You blink. Noted. As the ritual continues, the shaman throws handfuls of millet and dried herbs into the fire. Sparks leap upward like tiny stars escaping gravity. She mutters something low, her voice thick with meaning. You don't understand the words, but you absolutely feel them. Then she pauses. Slowly, she turns and looks at you. Your heart stops. She studies you with thoughtful eyes, the look of someone reading a page no one else can see. She steps forward, taps your chest lightly with her staff, and speaks a few words in a tone that is neither stern nor gentle, but something in between. The escort leans in to translate. She says your spirit is confused. You cough. That tracks. She says you walk between worlds, he continues. Not fully of ours, not fully of your own. You stare at him. Wow, she's extremely correct. He nods sagely, as if this is normal spiritual diagnosis. She says, you must be careful tonight. Tonight? You repeat. He nods again. The moon is strong. Spirits wander. Fantastic. Because your life definitely needed wandering spirits on top of everything else. Quirky tidbit for your growing list of concerns. Some Mongol shamans believed that during certain nights, restless ancestor spirits moved across the plains, searching for warmth or messages or unfinished business. People avoided whistling after dark, worried it might accidentally attract them. In conclusion, you will not be whistling tonight, or moving, or breathing too loudly. The ritual ends gradually, not with a dramatic finale but with soft dispersal. People bow their heads, touch their foreheads to the ground, and return to their tasks. The shaman extinguishes the fire with a gentle gesture and disappears into her tent like smoke slipping into a dream. As the sun rises fully, painting the sky in peach and gold, the caravan prepares to move on. But the mood feels different, lighter somehow, calmer. The air carries a sense of protection. Or maybe just the memory of the chanting. Historians still argue whether shamanic rituals had tangible effects on Mongol morale, or if they simply provided psychological grounding. Watching the caravan move with renewed confidence, you suspect both are true. You mount your horse, feeling the faint echo of the shaman's tap against your chest. The morning wind brushes your face, cool, soothing, almost friendly. For the rest of the day, you ride in a strange, comfortable haze, half aware of the physical world and half floating in the lingering hum of the ritual. The caravan crosses rivers, plains, low ridges. Birds soar overhead. The sky stretches in endless blue, And though you don't fully understand the spirit world, the Mongols navigate so naturally, you feel just a little that it's watching over you too. At least until night falls. Because apparently, according to the shaman, that's when things get interesting. By late afternoon, the caravan rolls to a halt beside a cluster of boulders shaped by centuries of wind. The rocks offer a bit of shelter from the coming night, which, thanks to the shaman's morning prophecy, you now regard with mild terror. You help unload supplies, tie down tarps, and water the animals, all while quietly praying no wandering ancestor spirit decides to check your soul like it's a rental horse. Your trainer notices your jumpiness. "You are quiet," he says. "I was told my spirit is confused." He shrugs. All spirits are confused. That is why shamans have work. You appreciate the reassurance, if you can call it that. Evening falls quickly, bringing a chill that cuts through your deal. Fires bloom around the temporary camp, and people gather in small groups, eating bowls of hot broth and laughing softly. The mood is peaceful for now. A merchant approaches holding a small pouch of herbs. "For protection," he says. The shaman gave extras. You accept the pouch politely, resisting the urge to immediately tie it to your face. The herbs smell like pine resin, fennel, and something that reminds you of old books in a dusty library. Comforting, in a strange way. But your comfort is short-lived, because tonight you're about to learn one of the harshest truths of the Mongol Empire. Disease is everywhere. Medicine is interpretive. As the caravan settles in for the night, a commotion rises near one of the carts. A young camel handler collapses mid-step, clutching his stomach. People rush to him as he groans, his skin pale and clammy. Your stomach drops. You've read enough medieval history to recognize that someone suddenly collapsing rarely ends with, "Never mind, he just needed a nap." Your trainer signals for you to follow. "Help," he says simply, as if that's not the most terrifying command you've heard all day. You kneel beside the sick man, heart pounding. A woman the caravan's healer pushes through the crowd. Her clothing is laden with pouches, bone charms, and strips of cloth. Her eyes are sharp, her hands steady. She examines the young man with a calmness you desperately envy. She presses his abdomen, checks his tongue, listens to his breathing, smells his sweat. Then she announces, "Not serious. Bad food." You exhale so sharply you nearly faint. She pulls out a small wooden box containing dried herbs, crushed roots, and tiny vials. She mixes something into a bowl of hot water and hands it to the young man, who drinks reluctantly. She ties a small charm to his wrist and instructs him to rest. You whisper to your trainer, "How does she know what's wrong so fast?" He shrugs. "Experience. Patterns. Spirits. Many things. Many things." Of course, mainstream fact time. Medicine in the Mongol Empire was a blend of practical herbal knowledge, shamanic beliefs, and foreign influences. Mongol healers treated wounds with poultices, used acupuncture borrowed from Chinese practice, boiled needles for cleanliness, and even performed simple surgeries. But diseases? Those were trickier. Remedies ranged from shockingly advanced to "please don't put that on me." You're about to witness both. Later in the evening, another merchant approaches the healer with a deep gash on his arm. Looks like he got into a disagreement with a camel. Camels, as you've learned, do not fight fair. The healer washes the wound with boiled water good, then sprinkles ground herbs on it still reasonable, then blows smoke from burning juniper directly onto it. You blink. Your trainer whispers, "This is to calm the angry spirit of the wound." "Right," you whisper back, nodding slowly. "The wound spirit." He nods, as if this is obvious. But here's the wild part. Between the herbs, heat, steam, and sheer practicality, the treatment works. The bleeding slows. The swelling eases. The merchant thanks her profusely. Then there's the quirky tidbit of the night. Some healers believed that certain sicknesses could be removed by placing hot stones into a bowl of fermented milk and chanting until the spirit jumped into the milk. You glance around nervously, hoping nobody brings out a bowl of possessed dairy tonight. The healer moves from person to person, bandaging a twisted ankle, soothing a persistent cough, removing a splinter the size of a small spear from a warrior's palm. You help grind herbs, boil water, hold torches. You're clumsy, slow, and constantly double-checking that nothing near you is cursed. But gradually, you warm to the rhythm. Healing here is communal. Everyone helps. Everyone cares. Everyone trusts the healer, not because she's mystical, but because she's proven herself countless times. Historians still argue whether Mongol medical practices were effective because of cultural exchange or practical necessity. Watching the healer work, you suspect both. Her knowledge feels old and layered, carrying fingerprints from China, Persia, the steppe tribes, and everything in between. Later in the night, the shaman herself appears at the edge of the firelight. She checks on the recovering camel handler, nods approvingly at the healer's work, and murmurs a blessing. The air feels heavier for a moment, like the world is listening. Then she disappears again, without a sound. Your trainer nudges you. See? Spirits and medicine work together. You nod. I'm trying to understand it. He smiles softly. Understanding is not needed. Respect is enough. As the fires burn low, you settle into your blanket, clutching your small pouch of herbs. The wind rustles the grass. Somewhere nearby, a camel bell jingles gently. The stars pulse overhead like distant, watchful eyes. And though you're still wary of the shaman's warning about wandering spirits, you feel strangely safer now, held not just by warriors and watchmen, but by centuries of healing hands and whispered wisdom. Tonight, you learn that survival in the Mongol Empire isn't just about strength or weathering battles. It's about resisting sickness, trusting the healers, and believing just a little in the unseen world. And for the first time, you fall asleep peacefully, even if you keep one eye half open for spirit activity, just in case. You wake to the sound of laughter, soft, low, familiar laughter that rolls across the camp like warm smoke. It's the sound of families stirring, stretching, teasing each other awake, already slipping into the early rhythm of work. The caravan is nearly ready to move again, but today, instead of joining scouts or guarding the pack animals, you're pulled aside by one of the elders. You've learned the horse, she says. You've learned the bow. You've seen war. You've seen spirits. Today, she pauses, giving you a long, appraising look. You learn how a household survives. You blink. A household? She nods. Family keeps us alive longer than horses. You follow her toward a cluster of small tents set apart from the rest. Women are stirring pots, mending clothing, packing bundles. Children chase each other between saddlebags. A toddler is attempting to eat a feather. Someone stops him. Barely. Welcome to the intricate, relentless, and frequently overlooked engine that powered the Mongol Empire. Gender roles and family structures flexible where they needed to be, strict where they had to be, and always shaped by survival. A woman hands you a large wooden pail and gestures toward a group of mares. Milk, she says. Careful. She kicks. Who kicks? You ask. She smiles. All of them. You quickly learn she's not exaggerating. You approach a mare with all the confidence of someone who has definitely never milked anything larger than a cereal carton. The horse eyes you suspiciously. You hold the pail. She swishes her tail. You reach forward. She lifts a leg in warning. You retreat, instantly. She doesn't like me. A teenage girl laughs. She doesn't like anyone. She steps forward, murmuring gently, stroking the mare's flank with practiced ease. You try again, this time under supervision, doing your best not to lose a finger. Milk streams into the pail, warm, frothy, slightly chaotic. You feel absurdly proud. Quirky tidbit time. Mongol women were often responsible for managing all things dairy milking, fermenting, churning, storing. Some even brewed airag so potent it could knock out half a camp if they weren't careful. It was practically a badge of honor. Once the milking is done, you help carry the heavy pails toward a small circle of women preparing dairy products. Someone hands you a skin bag filled with sloshing liquid. Shake, she says. For how long? She shrugs. Until it sounds right. You shake it. Your arms burn. It slaps your chest repeatedly like a mildly angry laundry bag. Someone helpfully tells you, if your arms hurt, you're doing it correctly. Another group is tending to children, and you are, of course, recruited to help. You hold a baby who immediately grabs your nose with an iron grip, A toddler hands you a rock with great ceremony, as if entrusting you with national secrets. Two kids argue over a stick. A third one steals your shoe. You'll retrieve it later. Probably. Mainstream fact: Mongol women had far more rights and responsibilities than many other medieval societies. They could own property, manage households, handle trade, ride horses, even participate in decision-making. While men often left to fight or herd long distance, women kept the entire social infrastructure running. And that infrastructure? It's intense. You help dismantle a small felt tent, removing poles, folding felt, tying bundles. The work is fast, rhythmic, coordinated. Women shout instructions, children carry small items. Even elders participate, passing ropes with efficient precision. Everything is designed to be portable, rebuildable, temporary but durable. One woman, clearly amused by your slow fumbling with a rope knot, takes it from your hands and fixes it in 3 seconds. Then she pats your shoulder like you're a child who just proudly ate grass. You accept the pat. You deserve the pat. Later, a group of men returns from checking the horses. A young man and woman immediately break into an argument over whose responsibility it was to secure the saddles last night. The argument lasts about 30 seconds fast, sharp, loud, and ends with mutual laughter and a shared bowl of tea. This, someone tells you, is marriage. You witness another dynamic, two elders commanding immense respect. A grandmother scolds a warrior who looks like he could punch a bear, and he listens like a chastened toddler. She has lived through winters he has only heard about, and her word carries weight. Historians still argue whether Mongol society was matriarchal, patriarchal, or something in between. In reality, it was both. Men handled war and long-range herding. Women handled everything else. Both roles were critical. Neither survived without the other. After lunch, you're invited to join a weaving circle. You politely decline, then accidentally get roped in anyway. You attempt to help braid rope. Your rope looks like a sad pretzel. A girl takes it, fixes it instantly, and hands it back. Better, she says generously. It is not better, but you appreciate her optimism. Near evening, the family group gathers for a small ritual, nothing dramatic, just a shared whisper to the spirits of the home. A pinch of flour tossed into the fire, a quiet hope for safety, a gratitude for survival. Then comes the moment that truly surprises you. A group of women saddle up horses with expert speed and ride off to gather firewood from a distant grove. At full gallop, laughing, your trainer nudges you, smirking. Thought only warriors rode well, he asks. You shake your head. I barely ride at all, he laughs. Exactly. As the sun dips low, the tents glow warm again. Children curl beside their mothers. Men mend harnesses. Women receive gifts of cloth and beads for their work. The air buzzes with domestic life, messy, loud, loving, and absolutely essential. Tonight, you realize something profound. You've seen the Mongol Empire's wars. You've ridden its endless roads. You've faced its cold and heat. But today, you saw its heart. A world where families hold everything together. Where women keep the lifeblood of the empire flowing. Where children learn survival at the same speed they learn to walk. Where elders maintain knowledge, tradition, and sanity. Where every person, every role keeps the steppe alive. You settle by the fire, exhausted but peaceful. A child hands you your stolen shoe back. You thank him. He shrugs like it's no big deal. Another day in the Mongol household. And as you fall asleep, you finally understand. The empire may have been built on horseback, but it survived because families carried its weight. You wake the next morning, expecting another lesson in family life, maybe more milking practice, your arms still hurt, or another attempt at braiding rope that doesn't look like a culinary accident, but instead, the elder who guided you yesterday stands outside your ger, arms folded, expression unreadable. Today, she says, you learn the law. The law, not the don't steal a horse or you'll get yelled at kind of law. Not the try not to fall off your saddle personal law. No, today you are learning Yasa, the legendary code attributed to Genghis Khan himself. A system designed to keep an entire empire from warriors to shamans to merchants to confused travelers like you running like a well-trained horse. You gulp. Is this difficult? She gives you a thin smile. Only if you break it. You follow her to the center of camp, where riders and merchants gather in, a half circle. A man stands beside a tall wooden post carved with symbols. He has an air of calm authority, stern, quiet, observant. He is the Yarguchi, the lawkeeper. He speaks, and the camp falls silent. 2 matters today, he announces. Your stomach twists. You pray it's not about the rope you may or may not have tied incorrectly yesterday. The first case involves 2 warriors arguing over a horse. Nothing unusual. Except this time the dispute concerns ownership after the animal wandered during last week's storm. The horse returned on its own, but stopped at the wrong tent. Ownership on the steppe is flexible, like that guided not by fences, but by memory, luck, and tradition. The Yarguchi listens. No interruptions, no theatrics. Then he gestures toward you. You, he says. You saw the storm path. Speak. You freeze. Everyone looks at you. You think back, rain, wind, flashing thunder, animals shifting in their sleep. You remember seeing the disputed horse, bolt toward the far end of camp, spooked by a falling pole. I saw him run toward the Jadaran tents. You admit, the Yarguchi nods. Then the horse stays with them until the next migration. After that, it returns to its original owner. Both sides accept. Just like that. Mainstream fact. Yasa wasn't a single written law code, but a flexible system. Part tradition, part decree, part communal expectation. It demanded absolute loyalty, forbade theft, protected envoys, punished falsehood, and valued efficiency above all. Breaking Yasa wasn't simply illegal, it was dishonorable. The second case is more serious. A merchant is accused of shortchanging a trader from another clan. Accusations like this could ruin trust on the Silk Road, and the Mongols valued stability over profit. The Yarguchi demands both recount their numbers. He inspects their bundles himself. Then, to your surprise, he asks a shamanic advisor to examine the scales not for spirits, but to ensure the tools themselves weren't tampered with. When the merchant is found guilty, the punishment is immediate. Not violence, not imprisonment, public shame. He must stand before the caravan and confess, returning twice the goods he stole. His face reddens, but he obeys. His reputation temporarily crumbles, but the community remains intact. Quirky tidbit for your growing cultural library. In some Mongol communities, minor offences were punished, with comic humiliation being forced to wear sheep horns, sing embarrassing songs, or clean every saddle in camp. Mongols believed laughter could restore balance more effectively than cruelty, unless the crime was serious. Then Yasa became unforgiving. After the mourning cases, you walk with your trainer toward the grazing horses. That was strict, you say carefully. He nods. Strict keeps us alive. If one man steals from a caravan, all caravans suffer. If one rider lies, an army dies. He pats your shoulder. Yasa is not about fear. It is about keeping the world from falling apart. You think about that as you help check the saddles. The Mongol Empire was too large, too fast-moving, too diverse to rely on slow courts or inconsistent customs. Yasa was the glue, the invisible thread binding millions of people across thousands of miles. Later, as the sun reaches its peak, the Yarguchi approaches you again. You learn quickly, he says. You blink. I didn't do anything. He smirks. You remembered the storm. Many forget. Memory is law's best ally. You're not sure if that's praise or foreshadowing, but you accept it graciously. Historians still argue whether Yasa was a formal code written down on scrolls or a fluid set of rules adapted by each Khan. No surviving document confirms its exact structure. But watching the system in action today, swift, fair, flexible, you understand its power. It wasn't law written in stone. It was law woven into daily life, into choices, into expectations, into the rhythm of the camp itself. As evening settles, the elder who brought you here hands you a small carved token, a simple wooden piece marked with swirling patterns. Carry this, she says. It reminds you to speak truth and act cleanly. You nod. I will. She studies you a moment longer. Your spirit is less confused today. You smile. A little. A little, she agrees. You lie down that night beside the soft embers of the fire, the token warm in your hand. The laws of the empire swirl in your thoughts, practical, strict, strangely humane. Life in the Mongol Empire wasn't ordered by fear. It was ordered by necessity, by survival, by a mutual understanding that chaos only wins when people let it. And tonight, wrapped in the quiet hum of camp life, you feel something new. A faint, unexpected sense of belonging. You wake before dawn to a sound you've learned to recognize instantly. Not horses, not warriors, not wind, but the rapid, rhythmic jingling of bells attached to a courier's harness. A rider bursts through the edge of camp in a blur of dust and breathless urgency. Another message, another summons, another impossible distance that somehow must be crossed before nightfall. Your trainer kicks lightly at your boot. Up, he says. Today you learn how the Empire speaks. You push yourself upright, still foggy from sleep. Speaks? He nods toward the departing courier. Fast, far, without stopping. And just like that, you're thrown into the whirling, exhilarating, the exhausting world of the Mongol communication system, the closest thing the medieval world ever had to lightning-speed internet. Before you even mount your horse, a local administrator stamps a wooden tablet, hands it to a courier, and sends her galloping into the early morning haze. The entire process takes less than a minute. You blink. That's it? Why slow? Your trainer asks. Speed is power. You ride with him today, not as a warrior, not as a herder, not as a caravan helper, but as an assistant observer to the Yam, the relay network that stretched across the empire like veins through a living body. Mainstream historical fact. The Mongols built a vast relay system of postal stations. Yam stations spread every 25-40 miles across their territory. Couriers swapped horses, gear, even clothing, to maintain speed. Some messages traveled hundreds of miles in a single day, unthinkable for most medieval societies. Your role is simple. Help resupply riders, guide fresh mounts, and try very hard not to slow anyone down. The last part is the challenge. You ride through the crisp morning air, the steppe glowing peach and gold beneath the rising sun. The ground trembles faintly under distant hoofbeats, not danger, but momentum. Within an hour, you reach the first Yam station. A small cluster of felt tents, wooden shelters, and fenced corrals filled with horses that look better fed and more energetic than you do. Workers here are already awake, moving with smooth precision. The station master gives you a curt nod. Help the new boy, he says to your trainer. You open your mouth to correct him. You're not exactly new anymore, but after tripping over a feeding trough, you decide the title is fair. A courier gallops in, dust flying. Before she even stops fully, someone grabs her reins. Another swaps her saddlebag. A third hands her a fresh horse. She drinks water in 2 quick gulps. She's gone again. All of that takes less than 30 seconds. Your jaw drops. How do they move so fast? Your trainer smirks. Practice. And urgency. You spend the next hour running, literally running between tents, corrals, and supply piles. You pass water skins, refill grain buckets, hand out strips of dried meat, and try, desperately, not to trip over the dozens of small, hyper-efficient tasks happening around you. By the time you catch your breath, you've sweat through your shirt, and your legs feel like boiled noodles again. Then, suddenly, a shout. Messenger, incoming. Everyone snaps into position. Your trainer points at you. Take the horse. You freeze. What? He pushes you forward. Take the horse. The courier thunders into the station. Dust swirls. His horse is heaving, foam spraying from its bit. You grab the reins and steer it toward a water trough, nearly tripping but catching yourself at the last second. Workers swarm the area, throwing blankets over the exhausted animal. Meanwhile, the courier receives a fresh mount and is already galloping away with a new message clutched in his fist. You stand there panting, holding the steaming reins of a horse who looks like it ran straight through a thunderstorm. Your trainer pats your back. Not terrible. You accept that as high praise. As the day wears on, you ride from station to station, watching the Empire's pulse beat through courier routes. Each stop reveals a new layer of brilliance, rations prepared in advance, horses bred specifically for endurance, standardized message tubes, guards ready to repel raiders, spare clothing in case of weather shifts. The efficiency is unreal. Historians still argue whether the yam was primarily military infrastructure or an administrative marvel. Watching it in action, you realize it was both and more. It was the nervous system of an empire, ensuring that no province, clan, or general ever felt isolated. Then comes your quirky tidbit of the day. Some couriers swore by tying tiny bells to their saddles, believing the sound kept bad spirits away during night rides. You ask your trainer if this is true. He shrugs. Or maybe they just liked music. Fair enough. Late afternoon. One last station. You're exhausted, dust-covered, and vaguely aware that your knees have stopped working correctly. But something catches your attention. A rider gallops in, carrying not a message tube, but a banner. The entire station reacts instantly. Whispers ripple through the workers. Someone mutters, "A summons from the Khan?" The rider dismounts, hands the banner to the station master, then collapses beside a water bucket. Your trainer leans in. "Sometimes messages are not words," he murmurs. "Sometimes they are symbols." You shiver. Empires don't just communicate news, they communicate authority. The station master immediately dispatches 4 riders in different directions. No further explanation. The signal alone is enough. On the ride back, you watch the horizon stretch into endless blue stillness. But now you understand. Beneath that stillness is motion constant, controlled, unstoppable. The Mongol Empire wasn't just built on horses. It was held together by communication so fast it might as well have been magic. Your trainer glances at you. "Now you see how we stay one people," he says quietly. You nod, bone-tired but changed. Today wasn't about violence or survival or weather. It was about connection. And tonight, as the camp gathers once again beneath a sky wide enough to swallow entire worlds, you feel a truth settle into your bones. On this harsh land, distance means nothing. Not when messages fly like arrows and riders carry the breath of the empire itself. You wake before dawn to a stillness unlike any you've felt on the steppe. No clatter of saddles, no barking dogs, no rushing couriers. Just a thin, pale sky stretching endlessly overhead, and a silence so deep it feels like the world is holding its breath. Your trainer sits beside the dying embers of last night's fire, sharpening a small knife with slow, thoughtful strokes. He isn't humming, he isn't smiling, he's just quiet. "You feel it?" he asks softly. You nod. You don't know what you feel, exactly only that something inside you is heavy. Heavy like exhaustion, like homesickness, like too many nights of fear and too many days of heat and cold stacked on top of each other until your bones carry the weight. Today, he says, you learn the last truth of the Mongol Empire. The steppe doesn't break you all at once. It wears you down, slowly, relentlessly, quietly, until you're running on spirit alone. You follow him out into the early light. The grass barely stirs. The horizon looks impossibly far. You've crossed this land for weeks now, moving with caravans, couriers, warbands, herders, tents, clan councils, constantly in motion, constantly adapting. But today, for the first time, you feel every mile in your body. Your legs protest even before you mount your horse. Your arms tremble when you tighten the saddle strap. Your eyes ache from too many sunrises and too little sleep. You climb into the saddle anyway, because everyone else does, everyone else must. As the camp sets off, the pace is gentle. Not a gallop, not even a trot. Just a long, steady trudge across open ground. You keep thinking someone will call for a rest. No one does. Hours pass. Your breath grows shallow. Your thoughts drift like dust. The land around you ripples with heat even though it's barely morning. A faint ringing hums in your ears, a mixture of fatigue and the steppe wind, threading itself through your bones. A woman riding beside you hands you a water skin without a word. Her face is drawn, eyes tired, hair tangled by the night wind. She looks exactly how you feel. "This is the hardest part," she murmurs. "What part?" She gestures to the world around you. All of it, the endlessness. Mainstream fact, Mongol endurance was legendary not because they loved suffering but because life demanded it. Herders walked for days after missing a horse. Warriors rode night and day in freezing storms. Women managed entire households despite exhaustion. Couriers risked collapse for the distant sake of messages. No one rested as much as they needed. Rest was a luxury they couldn't afford. You push on. The sun climbs higher. The earth vibrates with heat. Your mind begins to drift. Riders blur into shapes. Grass sways like green waves. You feel the strange, distant sensation of moving forward without quite being awake. When the shadow of a cloud passes briefly over you, you nearly cry from gratitude. Your trainer finally calls for a short break. When you dismount, your legs buckle. You kneel in the grass, heart pounding, vision swimming. He sits beside you. "This happens to everyone," he says gently. "The first time you feel the land's weight. You swallow hard. How do you endure it?" He looks out across the steppe. Endless, raw, beautiful, cruel. "With others," he says simply. "No one survives alone." You think about everything you've seen. The horse you learned to trust. The families who fed you. The shaman who tapped your chest. The healer who steadied the sick. The merchants who shared their stories. The warriors who fought beside their clans. The couriers who carried messages like lifeblood. The elders who maintained the rhythm of survival. You breathe. Slow, deep, present again. The group mounts up once more, and you follow. Your body still aches intensely, but something inside feels lighter, steadier. The land hasn't become easier. You've simply learned to move with it. As the sun reaches its peak and the horizon begins to shimmer, the caravan finally slows. Camp is made. Fires lit. The smell of broth drifts on the wind. Your trainer sits beside you, passing you a warm bowl. "You lived through the hardest lesson," he says. You smile weakly. "What lesson is that?" He taps his chest. "Endurance is not strength. Endurance is surrender." You let the words settle into you. Tonight, you lie beneath the broad Mongolian sky, the grass whispering against your cheek, your body exhausted, but your mind strangely calm. This world is harsh, unforgiving, demanding, and utterly magnificent. You watch the stars rise, sharp, brilliant, infinite, and for the first time since arriving, you don't feel like they're watching you struggle. You feel like they're keeping you company. The night deepens, and the steppe softens into a vast, dark cradle stretching in every direction. The fires burn low, glowing like tiny amber islands scattered across the plain. The sound of the wind loses its bite, becoming a long, slow breath moving gently through the grass, almost as if the land itself is exhaling. You take another breath with it, slower this time, letting the warm air from the fire brush your cheeks. The ache in your legs fades into a dull, distant hum. Your heartbeat eases. Your thoughts drift like dust in a golden beam of morning light. Around you, the camp settles. Horses sigh in their sleep. Someone stirs a pot one last time, the wooden ladle tapping softly against the metal rim. A child murmurs in a dream. A woman hums a tune low, steady, half memory, half lullaby, and the melody mingles with the wind. The world feels wide, but not overwhelming, quiet, but not empty, alive, but gentle. You lie back fully, letting the grass cradle you, feeling the earth warming slowly beneath the blanket of night. Overhead, stars spill across the sky, in shimmering, untidy constellations, bright enough to soften the darkness, soft enough to calm your thoughts. The steppe looks kinder now, not because it changed, but because you learned how to rest inside its vastness. Your breath deepens. Your arms loosen. Your eyelids grow heavier with each slow, drifting moment. You're safe. You're warm. You're part of something larger than fear, larger than fatigue, larger than time itself. Let the wind carry the last of the day away. Let the stars keep watch. Let your body unwind into the quiet rhythm of the night. Sleep comes softly now, settling over you like a warm felt blanket, wrapping you in silence, pulling you gently toward dreams.